Welcome to part 7 of this original character OC story that you guys are helping me to write and create. The OC themselves was made over on Patreon, you guys voted for things, and in the comments of every video, you help me decide what is going to happen next. I then take all of your votes, your suggestions, your ideas, and put them into the next video as I improvise my way through the next section of the story. We left our two main characters, the youngest Prince Erasmus and the assassin Darrow. They're sitting on a bench in a cemetery in a strange town that they have never visited before. They're looking out as the sun rises over the houses and dilapidated buildings. And they've both been talking about wishes, hopes, and dreams. Erasmus has his hair dyed dark black to cover up the royal red that people would use to recognize him. He's now a wanted man, convicted of his father the king's murder and the attempted assassination of his two older brothers. The assassin in question, who only attempted to assassinate Erasmus himself, who has since snogged Erasmus himself, but they're gonna talk about that eventually. Darrow is sitting there, wondering what on earth they should do next. They read an engraving on one of the headstones in this cemetery, and they realize they just want to do something. They're desperate for their story to start properly, and somehow, without really speaking about it, both of them have incorporated the other into what they want their future to be. And the plan comes to them as they sit there watching the sun rise and the town start to wake up. They hear the bustling of carts and people going about their days. The fish market starts up again, the bakery is open, they can hear the people going to work, they can smell the smells of all the food and everything. The town is alive again. And these two plan a very interesting plan. Both things. Here they are. Erasmus in particular really wants to find out who it was who actually murdered his father. There wasn't a lot of love lost between the two of them, and within reason he could just walk away from this and never know. But something is eating away at him. He wants to know who murdered his father, who attempted the assassination on his brothers, and who sent Darrow to assassinate him. Darrow himself doesn't know. He was given his mission by a mysterious figure with no name, which isn't unusual in their line of work. But there are ways to sneak back through and check. And Erasmus has become dead set on doing this. But as they talk about it, it becomes clearer to both he himself and to Darrow as they're speaking that the prince is not that bothered about clearing his own name. He's more bothered about his brothers not thinking that they were right about him. He doesn't necessarily want the brothers to know why he's been acting so strangely. That's very personal, and he doesn't think that they would actually care too much if they knew the real reason, but he definitely does not want his brothers to believe it was him. So they decide they will backtrack and go and find out who murdered the king, who attempted the assassination on not just Erasmus, but his two brothers as well. And then Darrow has an interesting thought. As they're discussing and learning that Erasmus doesn't really care whether people think it was him, he just himself wants to know the truth. The two of them realize that Erasmus has no intention of returning to his royal life. He has no intention of washing the black dye out of his hair. He has no intention of going back to be the prince he used to be. And this is where Darrow's idea comes in. The second thing that you guys voted for. Darrow quietly and almost on a whisper on the wind suggests, what if Prince Erasmus was dead? Darrow can be a little bit too blunt at times, and he doesn't quite realise the gravity of what he had said, but Erasmus is looking at him with slight horror on his face, because, if we remember back in episode 6, Erasmus was struggling a lot, and had been for a while. He had made a very, very awful, painful, tragic decision that had brought some peace to him, and then this assassin showed up in his life. And he was offered the means to end it, but did not take it, surprising both of them. Erasmus still has a long way to go, but he's no longer standing on the edge of that cliff anymore. And Darrow knows this. And it takes a beat of silence between them after Darrow has spoken for him to realise why Erasmus is staring at him. And when the assassin realises what he had just said, he reaches out at once, taking the prince's hand and shaking his head. He clarifies he didn't mean it literally. He means, what if they faked Prince Erasmus's death? Not only would that free him from ever having to go back to his family again, but also it would take the heat off. If everyone believes that he is dead, no one will be looking for him anymore. If everyone believes that he is dead, no one will be seeking the wanted criminal whose posters are no doubt winging their way all over the kingdom as they speak. And he finishes with this clever notion. If everyone believes that Prince Erasmus not only is guilty but also is dead, then the criminals who actually ordered the assassinations will relax a little bit. And this would enable Prince Erasmus and Darrow to track them down more easily. Darrow also points out that when criminals think they've gotten away with something, especially the big higher-up bosses, sometimes they can get just a little bit cocksure, and they might end up letting something slip in a moment where they believe it doesn't matter. This they can use to their advantage. The more he speaks, the more the prince quietly listens. And as he quietly listens, the idea forms and takes shape in his head. It's a good one. It's something that he wishes he had come up with himself. It's so easy, so obvious, so blindingly there in front of him. He starts to feel almost foolish that he had thought the only way out of his situation was to really end his life, when here was this solution all along. Pretend to, of course. But Darrow pulls him back from these trains of thought. He reminds the prince that it's not easy to fake someone's death. Anyone can disappear, but people still come looking. They still hold out hope. The chapter is not closed. The book is not ended. People will still look for you. What they need is a really convincing death. What they might need is a body. It's at this point that we learn something a little bit more about Prince Erasmus. And he learns it about himself as well. And the thing that we all learn in this moment is that just after Darrow has said, we'll need a body, Prince Erasmus feels that they should just get one. He doesn't think about what that would mean. He doesn't think about why or how. He knows he is with an assassin. And somehow the want, the desperate need to be out of his current life, that desperate want, for just a moment there, it overrides everything else. Every sense of morality that he or you or I might wish that we have about ourselves. This prospect of just get a body, any body, it doesn't matter whose it is, and it doesn't matter how we do it, that takes over his brain, and that's all he can think about. It doesn't matter to him in those few seconds. It doesn't matter to him how they get it, whose it is, when, where, why. He just wants it done. And as soon as he realizes that, that scares him. It freaks him out to the point where he blinks and stares at Darrow, who hasn't heard any of these things and thoughts going around in the prince's head. And so he thinks the prince is looking shocked at him. And he starts to apologize, saying, like, no, I didn't mean it like that. Like, we can find someone who's already dead. Like, I'm not gonna, we don't have to, and you can't quite find the words because this is Darrow, the assassin we're talking about. He's not great with the words or sharing his own thoughts or apologizing. And Erasmus takes his hand this time. They'd already been holding hands, so he sort of puts another hand down and squeezes onto it. And he shakes his head and he has to say, no, and he tries to explain. And suddenly he knows that of all the people in the world who might understand him and not judge him for those moments, it's Darrow, the assassin. Not just because of what he is, but because of who he is. And he explains to Darrow all the thoughts and the mad urges that went through his head. And Darrow holds the prince's hand back, close and tight to his own chest, pulling it in, kissing the prince's knuckles with his lips. And he looks up into those dark eyes and he says, thinking bad things don't make you a bad person. Wanting bad stuff don't make you a bad person. Doing bad stuff, well, that's different. But thinking it, that just means you're desperate. It just means you really, really want this. We're gonna make it happen. I promise. And We can do it where no one gotta die. Not anyone who went already dead anyway. Or, and he says this next bit to try and lighten the mood a little, we can find some shithead what deserves it, if you want. This does make the prince laugh. Darrow has got quite good at making the prince laugh over the few days they have got to know each other properly, and he smiles himself as well. And he doesn't just smile because he's laughing, he smiles because he's kind of proud of himself that he can make this man who was on the very edge of the cliff laugh now. He can make him light-hearted and full of mirth again. And somehow, in a way he doesn't quite realise right now, that's very important to him. That's where they're going to leave the plan for the morning. They have been walking around most of the night, they are tired, they decide to go and get some food. They've got a few bits of gold between them, they're trying to not spend too much of it, because who knows how long it's going to have to last them. And so they go to a kind of quiet, run-down sort of tavern, not the one that they stayed at. They decide to go to a different one, which has a big breakfast sign outside, and it smells really good. So they go inside, they pay a few coin, and they sit down at a table by the far corner, away from the windows, and they tuck into a really big breakfast. As they're eating, they watch as people come and go, and they start to realise, Darrow in particular, what kind of place this side of the town is. It's definitely the criminal hideout. There's definitely dodgy folks. There's people who have been out all night, probably just coming in from a robbery. There are people who are quite literally on the run. There are, at some points, people running in, flying in through the doors and going and paying coin to hide behind the bar, going into a cellar, running up the stairs. There are people agreeing to alibis all around them. No one seeming to care that people can overhear them in this place. It is definitely a criminal stop-out. And Darrow feels completely at home. Prince Erasmus is trying to as well. Now that he has different hair and he's changed his clothes somewhat, he feels more relaxed as well. And as they're finishing up their food, Darrow says very quietly, leaning across the table on his elbows, I reckon, to make this work, we're going to have to turn you into a criminal. The prince blinks at this, staring at Darrow. But I have no skills. I've never stolen anything. What would I even do? Darrow chuckles and nudges the prince on the elbow. How do you reckon this game works? You wander up to someone, shake a criminal by the hand and give them your CV? Nah. You ask them what they need doing, they tell you, you let them know if you can do it or not. If you can't do it, you don't offer them your services and they get someone else. Simple as that. Plus, anyway, you look good, you're eloquent. Everyone will just think you're the front man anyways. The prince blushes heavily at this, and it's shown in great contrast to the newly dark hair. You think I look good? Darrow shrugs like it's the most obvious thing in the world and says, yeah, of course. Look at you. And he really is looking. Prince Erasmus sees him looking. Darrow is looking him up and down. He definitely thinks the prince looks good. This is probably the first time that Darrow has not managed to be particularly subtle. As they talk, their plan becomes, well, relatively simple. To talk about, at least. To execute, remains to be seen. And I'll let you guys vote on that later on. But for now, here is their plan. They want to fake Prince Erasmus's death, and they want to find out who assassinated the king. So, they decide to pass themselves off as a criminal duo, looking for work, travelling around, and as they delve deeper and deeper into the criminal underworld, they will ask around as though impressed, trying to find out who it was who finally killed the king off. And eventually, someone will let something slip, and then they'll know for sure. Erasmus decides that he wants to fake his own death sooner rather than later, to feel this feeling of freedom and not let it slip away again. He wants them to find someone to pass off as himself, fake the death, and spread the word as far and as fast as they can. They don't actually get to talk about much else that morning. They are halfway through some drinks, wondering whether or not they should go and find some more different clothes so they can both look completely different. Darrow is even talking about potentially dyeing his hair a different colour, though he's very aware that his facial scars give him away no matter what. But just in that moment, the big heavy door behind the bar down into the cellar opens again, and more criminal scum come out. There's clearly been a meeting of some sort. They're still talking, looking furtively around the bar, checking before they all come out. The bartenders are keeping a lookout outside for them, one of them by the door, one of them by the stairs, as they usher them out gently, one at a time. And then the last figure comes out of the cellar. And Erasmus watches as all the colour drains from Darrow's face. The man who steps out of the cellar is vast, hulking, huge shoulders, shaved head, pointed dark eyebrows, and eyes that look like slits. He steps up, douche, douche, heavy footfalls onto the bar, and a soft silence falls. Everyone in this room seems to know he is a criminal mastermind, a criminal boss of great importance. And as the man steps out of the cellar, hands thrust casually into his pockets, bloodstains still splattered down his shirt, and a blade sticking in his back pocket, those slit-like eyes stare around the room and suddenly widen as he spots Darrow. If Darrow had been holding a glass, not a tankard, it would have shattered, smashed into 1,000 pieces. His hand begins to tremble just a little, and his knee under the table is shaking. Prince Erasmus looks from Darrow to the man who's just emerged from the cellar, and though he does not recognize the man, something sparks a memory in his head. A memory of a description Darrow had given him when talking finally about his past, about what happened to him the night they had met some 5 years previously. The great looming man now stepping slowly out from behind the bar and making directly towards their table is the criminal boss that Darrow used to work for. The one who had made him take the vial of poison and sent him away to his own death. And this is the man Darrow has been running from ever since. He stares, unblinking, unflinching in his seat, but unable to move, as the great mammoth of a man steps up and stops at the edge of their table. And suddenly, both the prince and the assassin regret choosing the one in the far corner, with no window and no door by which to make an escape. There's a long, long silence. Pale blue eyes stare up, dark, shark-like eyes glare down, and the prince sits horrified between the pair, wishing there was something he could do, eyes flicking to the blade in the man's back pocket. Darrow seems to know better than to speak first, and eventually the vast criminal says, "Well, look who it is. The walking Deadman." Erasmus flinches, but Darrow does not. He says, slowly and simply, "What you doing here, Maximus? This ain't your turf." 2 large hands thud down onto the table as the man leans in closer. "Oh, Darrow, little Darrow, it's been years. You got no idea what's my turf no more. And you just walked right on in. Oh, this is not your day. Not your day at all." As the hands press onto the table, pale blue eyes flick instinctively over to Erasmus and then back again. Immediately, Darrow closes his eyes and groans. He'd given himself away. And Maximus, the criminal boss, notices at once. A smile, broken, crooked teeth hanging out of his mouth, splits his face as he turns and takes in the dark-haired prince. Once, twice, 3 times the dark, shark-like eyes look up and down. And this time, unlike when Darrow had looked him up and down, the prince feels almost violated. He tries to stare back, but the lump in his throat grows and he swallows, blinking hard. Darrow? Who's your friend? There's no warmth in the question, and the dark eyes do not leave Erasmus's face. Darrow stands up at once, both his hands pressing on the table as well. A fire rages inside, part angry at himself for giving away something he cared about, but part rage at this man for daring to appear back in his life just when everything was getting so good. And something else ignites in the back of Darrow's mind. An anger, a rage, a burning worry that smashing that vial had somehow summoned Maximus here. He leans closer across the table as through gritted teeth he snarls back. He ain't nothing to do with you. And nor am I no more. Fuck off. There's a ripple around the room at that. None of them had noticed how quiet the tavern had gotten. But everyone had been listening, even the bartender. The door to the cellar lies open, the hatch untouched, everyone watching as Maximus had strode across and stopped at their table. It happens faster than anyone could have predicted. 2 blades are drawn simultaneously, 2 hands smash the table aside into smithereens on the floor, and 2 bodies launch at each other. Darrow is springing up, trying to get to the bigger man's throat, while Maximus is reaching down as though to drive the blade into Darrow's back. To the prince's credit, he doesn't scream, he doesn't fly backwards, he doesn't run from the tavern. He stands up, looking between the 2 men, desperately wondering what he can do. But everyone else in the bar begins to cheer and shout, some encouragement, some insults, some begin immediately placing bets. Some of them, the closer they look, can recognise Darrow now, especially as his mask is off and down, they can see his face. And as the 2 men smack into each other, blades slashing in the air, money is exchanging hands pretty rapidly around this room. As the fight continues, messy, uncoordinated, blades slashing through the air, Prince Erasmus suddenly remembers very vividly what it was like to watch Darrow fight. He is still just as quick, just as agile. If anything, Darrow's got even better. He dives under the large man's legs, ducks out of the way as he draws a second blade from behind his back and lunges down into the assassin's side. Darrow rolls away along the floor, kicks the man's ankle out, chucks a stool at him, rolls across the bar, smashes him over the head with a bottle, ducks again as the blades come down and drive into the wood, slicing through the bar as the tavern keeper backs away, again placing bets with the people around him. It becomes suddenly very clear to the prince that Darrow is deliberately moving the fight away from him. And while they cannot speak to each other, the prince understands intuitively what Darrow wants him to do. Slowly joining in with the crowd, the prince starts to edge around the room, making his way towards the front door. The hulking criminal Maximus does not stop grinning the whole way through this fight. Even when sliced with Darrow's blade, even when smashed in the head with a bottle, he keeps that wicked grin on his face. And as Darrow makes another dive across the floor, landing on his back, blades up, ready to defend himself, he leans forwards as he takes his swing and he says, "Soon as I've dealt with you, it'll be your pretty friend next." And this makes Darrow so angry that he kicks up against the man's stomach, pushing himself off the floor and rolling with the man until they are both smashing into a table, scattering chairs and wood everywhere. There's a great roar of applause from the crowd, more money exchanging hands now, the bet seeming to be almost 50-50 on who they think could win. And as Darrow struggles and stands up out of the wreckage, clutching his head, he almost drops one of his blades, but manages to keep a hold on it. Maximus is soon up behind him, taking a wild swing at his face again, and Darrow just ducks out of the way in time. He dives past people's feet through the crowd, leading the man further and further into the tavern. His eyes glance towards the door once as Maximus has his back turned. He sees Erasmus has made it all the way to that door, and Darrow nods. He wants the prince to leave. He wants him to get out of the door. But as they lock eyes, he realizes Erasmus is not leaving without him. And it's this thought that brings both of his blades stabbing down into Maximus's stomach. It's this thought that stabs them in deeper and deeper. And it's this thought that stops it from hurting when Maximus swipes him with a huge hand, sending Darrow flying backwards across the floor, blood spraying in a huge arc as he goes. He lands face first right by the crowd of people's feet, and he wipes the blood from his own nose as he sits up, grabbing his blades from where they'd fallen. But Maximus is struggling a little now. He stands up, clutching his wounds, and he points to his dogs in the room and says, "Get them both." And at this point, Darrow decides to run for it. Usually he would stay, usually he would finish the fight, but not now. Not in this moment. He struggles up to his feet, blades held in one hand as he reaches desperately for Prince Erasmus and shouts, "Go! Go now!" Erasmus takes his hand, opens the door, and they sprint out into the street. They are pursued at once by 3 of Maximus's men. They chase them down the alley, round a corner, another, through a zigzag of streets, through puddles, through the market, into the posher area of town. As they dive down a smaller, narrower passageway, they manage to pause to catch their breath, the men being half a street behind them. As they take this pause, Darrow slowly lets go of the prince's hand, head back against the wall as he slumps slowly down it, catching his breath as he leans his hands on his knees. It's then that Erasmus sees the trail of blood that Darrow has left in the wall behind him. This moment is coming from several prompts that a lot of you have given me over on Instagram and in the comments over here, and it was for hurt and comfort and someone getting hurt and a fight where someone's injured and not realizing someone's hurt until it's too late. And this is the culmination of all of those wishes, you bloodthirsty lot. Here we go. Darrow is wounded. His clothes are so dark that the prince cannot tell where or how badly, but they don't have time for him to check. They can hear the men coming rushing up behind them, tripping over barrels, shouting, "There, that way, they went down there." They have a decision to make, which means you guys have a decision to make. In the comments down below, I want you to vote for me and tell me where you think these two should go to hide. I will give you 3 options and you guys can pick which one. Option number 1. In a true assassin style, they can climb up high and get onto the roofs, possibly hiding behind chimney stacks or climbing further away across the rooftops. Option 1, the roofs. Option number 2. They can go further down to the end of this alley and hide out in a big garden. It's like a sort of park in the middle of this town. They've got towards the fancy area of town, remember? So a big park, lots of trees, lots of birds, maybe some animals, lots of bushes, and maybe some climbing frames and benches, maybe lots of other people around as well. But option number 2, a park. And option number 3. They get into one of the buildings down this alleyway. Maybe it's someone's house, maybe someone lets them in, maybe a window is open, maybe they pick a lock, maybe they smash a door open, maybe it's a shop, someone's in there, it's empty, it's deserted. What kind of place would you like it to be if you choose option number 3? And if you want to say how they got in, you can put that in as well. So option number 3, one of the buildings. So that is where we're going to leave the story for today. Let me know in the comments down below, which option would you like? Option number 1, the rooftops. Option number 2, the garden. Or option number 3, one of the buildings. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you've got any requests, any thoughts, anything, let me know what you're thinking of the story so far. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to join me on Patreon, then you can do. You get to vote on some extra other things, and I'm going to try and post some more stuff on there very soon. I'm also in the middle of starting a brand new cosplay. Well, it's a second attempt at an old cosplay, so I'll be posting that on Patreon as well if you want to go on there and have a little cheeky look. Some of you already know what it is. I've been dropping hints here and there. It's going to be fun and it's going to be quite a big cosplay. All right, in the meantime, have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you so much for joining in and listening to this story. Would you like me to write it down somewhere? Let me know that. Those of you who are asking, yes, I've got an AO3 account if you want to read more of my stuff. I've got some ongoing fics on there. So it's Archive of Our Own, Morcus Noise, same name on every platform. So have a look on there if you want to see some more of my stuff. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day, my wonderful jelly spoons. Don't forget to hydrate, and thank you for joining in with this story. Let me know any thoughts and things in the comments down below. Goodbye.